Yo, what's up guys, and welcome back to a new video. In our last video we have talked a little bit about Slayer and what it has to offer, and today it is time to have a look at Mountain Thane. Now, for everybody that is looking for the most competitive build as of making this guide, you should check out the Slayer guide, as Mountain Thane is currently quite a bit below Slayer in terms of both single target and AoE output. So without any further ado, let's have a look at what our tier set actually does. Now, for our 2 set, we have our Bloodthirst increasing the damage of our next Rampage by 10%, and for our 4 set, we have when our Raging Blows resets its own cooldown, the damage of our next Bloodthirst will be increased by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. Now, this is quite an underwhelming tier set in my opinion. It is a decent tier set in terms of that it's passive, we gain some extra damage, but it is far less competitive than any of the other sets out there in my opinion, and I do feel that it would be nice if there was a little bit more thought put into it. Now, taking a look in the talents, we see one competitive and plus build being the Reckless Abandon build. Now, there is one major change with Mountain Thane, being that we are going to use Thunderclap rather than Whirlwind in order to get our Meat Cleaver stacks. So you can see us talent into Thunderclap and Crackling Thunder on the left side of the tree, and we will unfortunately lose Rumbling Earth because we do not have enough points to talent into it anymore. Now, we see an interesting choice being Barbaric Training. Normally we always talent into Sidearm, but because most of our damage will come from that Thunderclap being buffed up, we are instead opting in for Barbaric Training. Now, once again, we see Thunderous Roar with Thunderous Words. We do not opt into Uproar, as of the latest nerfs, it is actually better to run Armored to the Teeth in both AoE and ST. Now, you could opt in to Uproar if you would really want to, for a slight increase in AoE if you take it to the max potential. However, usually it is just better to have that passive bonus from the armor generating strength in Armored to the Teeth. Now, lastly, we are playing with Titan's Torment. Why do we play with Titan's Torment? Because it goes hand in hand with Odin's Fury doing a lot of damage and us playing Titanic Rage. Now, on the right side of the tree, we see us talent into Powerful and Rage. I have already talked a little bit about this very subject in the Slayer guide. In big AoE burst scenarios, it is usually better for us to run with Powerful and Rage, especially combining that we are mostly going to play around our Thunderblast procs, meaning that we will generally do more damage if we have those in a buffed up scenario, and we do not gain as much value from haste in this build. Now, furthermore, we are not opting into either Sudden Death, Ashen Juggernaut or Massacre. We are fully buffing up our Bloodthirst on the left side of the tree, and we play with Reckless Abandon without Depths of Insanity or Unbridled Ferocity, as they have been nerfed and they are not as good as they once were. We are playing with Ravager instead of Bladestorm. More on this a little bit later in the rotation, and we play with Unhinged, and we have already established that we're playing with Odin's Fury and Titanic Rage. So coming back to that Ravager, why do we play Ravager over Bladestorm? And it is a pretty simple explanation. Because we play with Unhinged, we are going to send out Bloodthirst while we are Bladestorming or when we have our Ravager down. Now, with Mountain Thane, every Bloodthirst that we send out has a 35% chance for us to generate a Thunderblast. And when we get a Thunderblast, we will want to send it as the highest prio, because we cannot send more than 2. Now, furthermore, when we send our avatar, we will instantly generate 2 charges of Thunderblast, which is the maximum, so we want to get rid of those ASAP, and this will just conflict with Bladestorm, as this will only generate more Thunderblast charges for us that we cannot instantly spend, because we are Bladestorming. Now, looking at the single target build, we do not see a whole lot of changes from the Mythic Plus build, because we are still playing around our Thunderblasts. Now, funnily enough, we are still playing with Improved Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver on the right side, as this will make our Thunderclap and Thunderblast deal more damage, and it will also generate Rage for us. Now, this is a very important thing, as we are prioritizing those Thunderblasts as our main damaging ability. Now, on the left side, we see that we are talenting into both Champion Spear with Champion Smite and Piercing Challenge, and instead of playing with Titan's Torment, we have instead opted into Berserker's Torment, and we have skipped out on our Roar talents. Now, on the right side of the tree, we have completely talented out of Odin's Fury and instead took Unbridled Ferocity. We have let go of Bloodborne, since we are not using either Roar or Odin's Fury anymore, and instead we are buffing up even more on that Bloodthirst, we took Hack and Slash and Rev and Fury, and surprisingly, we still do not see Ashen Juggernaut or Massacre make a return in this build. Now, once again, most of our damage is gonna come from that Thunderblast, so we are once again playing with Ravager instead of Bladestorm, as we do not want to overcap on those Thunderblast charges, but rather send them out ASAP. Now that we have taken a look at both builds for M+ and Raid on Mountain Thane, it is time to dive into how our rotation actually looks like, starting off with the M+ rotation. Now, for our opener, we will want to use Recklessness Avatar into a Roar. You can use a macro for this, as I will showcase in the video, followed up by a Thunderblast into a Ravager, into your Odin's Fury, followed up by Rampage, Crushing Blow, Bloodbath into another Thunderblast. To show you how this looks like, you will charge in and press your macro, followed up by a Thunderblast into your Ravager, into Odin's Fury, followed up by Rampage, Crushing Blow, Bloodbath, into another Thunderblast. When we come out of our opener, we will follow the following priority. We will always use a Thunderblast whenever we are enraged. We will use a Thunderclap if we do not have Whirlwind stacks available to us. We will use a Rampage if we are not enraged. We will use a Crushing Blow into a Bloodbath, into a Rampage to reapply our Reckless Abandon, into a Bloodthirst, into a Raging Blow. Now, if you don't have any of those available to you, you could use Whirlwind as a filler. However, it is very unlikely that you will ever come to a point where you need to do that. Now, since we are playing Mountain Thane, funnily enough, we will actually use exactly the same opener and priority for both ST in Mythic Plus and AoE in Mythic Plus, with the only change being that we will not use Thunderclap to reapply our Whirlwind stacks, but will use it as a last resort filler. Now that we've talked about the Mythic Plus part of this guide, it is time to move on to the single target portion of this guide. And because we're not playing with Titanic Rage from Odin's Fury or with Onslaught in this build, we have to improvise a little bit in order to get our enrage off initially. So what we would want to do for our opener is to use our Recklessness into a charge, so we have enough rage to use a Rampage into an Avatar, Ravager, followed up by our Champion Spear, into a Thunderblast, into a Crushing Blow. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time in our opener to use a Bloodbath afterwards, so instead we will use a Rampage into another Crushing Blow, into a Thunderblast, and then lastly as a Bloodbath to follow it up. Now, this might seem a little bit overwhelming at first, but if you narrow it down and you give it some practice, it is not as bad. Now, to give you guys a look in how it will actually look into a real scenario, I will slow it down a little bit for you guys so you can follow along. First of all, we will use our Recklessness into charge into a Rampage, followed by Avatar, Ravager, Spear, into a Thunderblast, Crushing Blow, Rampage, Crushing Blow again, into another Thunderblast, and we will follow it up by a Bloodbath. Now, for me, because I slowed it down a little bit, we did not get the Bloodbath in, but if you are doing the rotation as normal, you will have a Bloodbath there. Now, when we get out of the opener, we will always use the following priority. If we are not enraged, we will use a Rampage, instantly followed up by a Thunderblast if we are enraged, followed up by a Crushing Blow, a Bloodbath, a Rampage to reapply our Reckless Abandon, followed up by a Raging Blow into an Execute, into a Bloodthirst, and lastly a Thunderclap as our last resort filler. Now that we've talked about pretty much everything there is to talk about in terms of talents and our rotation in both M+ and in Raid, it's time to move on to the gearing section of this guide. Now, for our tier set, we will want to prioritize our legs, hands, chest and shoulders, as they provide us with the best stats, and we will want to take those slots if those are available to us. Now, this does not mean that you should be passing out on a head tier set slot if you were to get one. However, it is preferred to skip out on it. Now, for the trinkets, we would want to prioritize the Arakara Sekbrod and the Skarmorak Shard. The Arakara Sekbrod gives us a nice passive strength increase, and the Skarmorak Shard gives us a massive bonus in our mastery. Now, the alternatives would be the Mark of Kardros, also providing us with a huge chunk of mastery, or the Void Pact Stone. Now, for our stats, we would want to prioritize first of all our main stat being strength, into mastery, into haste, into versatility and lastly crit. Now if you are more of an M plus player, you could opt in for a little bit more crit, as this does scale higher whenever you are in very high target count pools. Now whenever we look into crafting, I would advise, as of making this guide, to hold off a little bit, as some of the embellishments are still yet to be tuned a little bit or yet to be properly tested. However, as of right now, it looks best to craft our weapon with Dark Moon Ascension, and secondly, as an alternative, Dust Thread Lining. Now for M+, the value of Dust Thread Lining goes up quite significantly, and overall the damage potential is highest with Dust Thread Lining. Once again, I would hold off a little bit on it and probably hold an eye on the Skyhold Discord as to what is going to be best. Now, whenever we look at the best races for both M+ and Raid, for M+, I would suggest you go Night Elf. As we do quite a lot of burst damage, it is very nice to have that Night Elf ratio to be able to reset that threat and not instantly die. Now, if you're looking for the best damaging options, you are better off by taking a Mega Gnome or to take a human. As of making this video, Slayer is currently ahead of Mountain Thane, so if you have not yet checked out that guide, I will leave a link to that video in the description down below. I will also leave a link to my Discord where you can find my entire UI and all the macros that I've used in this video, so you can copy those over completely for free. And if you liked this video, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below on how you think Fury is gonna play in the War Within, and consider subscribing. And as always, I hope to catch you in the next one.